You're listening to Guitar Talk with Dave and John.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I am Dave.
This is John.
And this is Guitar Talk.
Where we will be talking about food.
And beverage. Yes. So John, you sent me a message this week. Something about you bought another amp.
Something about Yeah. So Craigslist.
Folks, two conversations ago, John said, yeah, I'm not buying any gears for a while.
Right.
Yeah, 2 days later. Yeah. Remember what I said? Forget it.
It's not my fault. So Craigslist turns up again with a fantastic deal. I now have, let's see if my blurry background might not let this happen.
Yeah, you have to unblur the background.
Oh, it's hard to see. Whatever. I'm not going to deal with it. I will explain with words. I picked up another Rectoverb 50. Rectum fire.
Nice. A single rectifier.
Rectoverb 50 112 combo. This one is Series 2. This one is also in immaculate condition. And it was $500.
Wow.
Yeah.
You even got it cheaper.
That's just
$100
ridiculous.
less.
Yeah.
And a version 2, that's a great deal.
Yeah. It's
I'll give you 4 for it.
I'll tell you what, the only thing that the guy did wrong is he did not put the boogie casters on it. He's got some other thing on it. So the height, when you sit it next to the other one, is slightly off. It's about a half-inch taller.
Oh, I see.
Got to get rid of it.
For the OCD crowd, that is a major no-no.
Oh, it's driving me banana. But I used it yesterday at Elvis Simmons and the Memphis Strutters practice. I actually put enough faith into this guy, which is interesting on my part. I was being very trusting. So I bought it yesterday on my way to practice.
Wow.
And I said, "You're sure there's nothing wrong with it? It's not going to, I'm not going to have volume dropping out from old tubes after an hour of playing it." And he goes, no, everything is like totally clean. So I went and picked it up. It was super clean. Then I played it through rehearsal, which was like a 2.5 hour rehearsal, and it was perfect.
Wow.
No issues. So I'm pretty confident that it was a good deal. And on top of that, it already had a vintage 30 in it instead of a Black Shadow.
Oh wow!
Which I would have upgraded anyways and spent another $100. So giddy up.
Wow! So you actually saved $200. Yeah, the thing with Mesas and the tubes is they do really well with tubes. They're not an amp that go through tubes so much. Whereas, I don't know what's up with the Fender design, but Fender seems to chum a little through tubes. So I'm always looking, I always tell people don't worry about gear, but when I look online, I'm always looking for two things. I'm looking for another Sterling Classic bass just to see if someone's out there getting rid of one, because they don't make them anymore. And any type of 5E3 amplifier from Fender, any type of 57 Deluxe clone. And I'm not looking for it like if I see one that's got a decent price, I'm looking for one like you just found. Like if someone's blowing it out, then I would pick it up because it would be something I want. But other than that, I just don't care so much.
I got to tell you, I saw a USA-made Sterling bass on Craigslist here in LA the other day. I think yesterday, maybe the day before, that somebody said needed a lot of work.
Yeah.
And they were asking $500.
Not a Sterling Classic. The difference is the
I don't
Sterling.
know the difference, yeah.
Yeah, the Sterling Classic is going to have it's going to have the mutes in the bridge, and it's going to have no other bells and whistles, just 3 knobs, whereas the regular Sterling has a 3-way switch, which puts like a capacitor or something on. But, it's just nonsense stuff I don't want. It splits the coil, and I don't need any of that. I like the Sterling Classic. It's simplicity. I like simplicity.
Right.
Folks,
yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a regular Sterling. They're only asking $500 for it, but as I'm reading it, it says it appears to have been spray painted.
Oh yeah, I'm sure
So
it's
that's-
lovely.
Yeah. It's like, boy.
Also, the Sterling Classic has like a heavily lacquered, aged, what do they call that? Not flame maple, but a bird's eye maple neck.
Okay.
So it's a nicer neck. This and the regular Sterling just has a satin maple, plain maple neck. Just visually, what you can see the difference.
Got it. Yeah.
But yeah.
Anyway.
But since we're talking about brands,
I saw a video this weekend from Rick Beato, who I like. I think he does a good job. The video was called "Do Brands Matter Anymore?" Is Gibson, Fender, PRS, Neve, or SSL your thing? And they get into it and they talk about it, and it's 30 minutes of them going through whether or not brands matter.
right?
And a big part of the conversation toward the beginning of the video, I think the first 10 minutes, were all about brand loyalty.
Did you show up in a black T-shirt that said "All brands matter"? Thank you, folks.
I mean, when I started watching the video, the first thing I started thinking is, do brands matter anymore? Only as an identifier. If somebody says, I want a Fender sound, I want a Gibson sound, whatever, I think that has more to do with what people are after than like the actual brand. And they were asking questions about brand loyalty. What do you think about a consumer looking at a brand and having loyalty toward that brand?
Well, I think people tend to like what they like. And I do believe that there's an inherent laziness in brand identity, and people generally are lazy. However, I think like when I ran West LA with you, we dealt with a lot of people coming in, and I sold a lot of Taylors. And one of the reasons why was people would come in and be like, I want a Martin. I've wanted one my whole life. To me, it's the brand when I think of an acoustic guitar. I just want to find the right one because of my arthritis.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just be like, the right one is over here. It's called Taylor. And they're like, no, I want something that's built in the USA. They come up with these things, these roadblocks of misconceptions they have. And basically all you have to do is tell somebody the story of another brand, and they kind of like the charm of that. Usually people that are, I think, brand people are people who love the story. So some people will go out and come into a store and they'll be like, I want to buy a Fender Stratocaster because that's the guitar that started the craze, and that's what Buddy Holly played on the Ed Sullivan Show, and that's what Hendrix played at Woodstock, and I want one because that's what I want to learn, and there you have it.
I feel like what you're talking about is somebody that's buying their first guitar or buying their first real guitar, perhaps.
I would agree with that. I think that's where the brand, I think that's who, and then if they have a good experience, they're like, people are collectors. I said this the other day on my channel, that people love to collect shit. It's like that's something innate in human beings. It's like when you buy one Fender, oh, I have a Strat, now I want a Tele.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, now I want a Les Paul. But now because I want the big three, because these are the three icons.
Right.
And really, that's why those brands get those people, because they're iconic. Could Music Man get some of those people? Well, I think they do in the bass, because they have an early history of funk in the 70s with the Stingray and the...
Yeah, I think with the basses.
I'm blanking on the name.
They just call it now a Stingray HH.
Right, but it wasn't originally. It was it was something else, and I can't think of it. It's irrelevant. But anyways, I think like people like the story, which is where G&L kind of sits, because G&L kind of says you have to hear our story.
Right.
And And I think it's a mistake, if you want my opinion. I think the story is the story. It's a decent story, and you should be telling that story to the people at the POS. At the point of sale, those are the people that should be able to say to someone that's looking for a Strat, hey, listen, I have G&L. Do you know their story? Let me tell you their story. But G&L itself has to come at them with like, we make a better product, and we have our thumb on the pulse.
Sure.
You know,
sure. I don't disagree with that, but I'm talking about from a consumer perspective. What is brand loyalty? I'll tell you what, brands are not loyal to you.
No.
They want your dollars, and if you're not giving them up, what are they going to do? They're not going to come over and console you. They're going to find the next guy. But what is it to a guitar player like you or me to look at a brand these days? Take somebody that's got some experience that isn't buying their first guitar, that probably isn't buying their 20th guitar. You know, we're past that. What is brand loyalty? Do you even, you know, when you're thinking about something, do you start at a starting point and say like, I want, you know, a Fender sound or a Gibson sound, or or at this point, is it just like, if I run across something cool, I'll pick it up if it's the right price?
Well, for me, if somebody tells me I'm looking for a guitar, the first thing my question is price point. What are we talking about here? Because that changes the whole conversation, just as if I was still in a store. What's your budget? What are you looking to spend? And someone, if they say, hey, look, I want to buy, like, let's say someone says, hey, I want to buy my daughter a guitar. Right. And she says, and he says, well, listen, I'll spend up to $300. I would be like, go on Craigslist and look for a used Mexican Strat. It's a great value at that price point. I mean, it's an excellent value at that price point.
Right.
If there were a G&L Legacy, which I like less because, you know, I've discussed the problems I think it has in the bridge. You can't make the bridge non-floating, and for that, I would never play one. But if somebody was looking for like a Telly, again, then I would say if you happen to see a G&L ASAT Tribute Series, that's as good, if not better, than the Mexican Telecaster. Mm-hmm. But I'm always jumping right, what's your price point? Somebody says to me, hey, I'm looking for a Strat-style guitar. I mean, it's hard because it's so built into the name of the company, the Strat, because everyone still calls that guitar a Strat. So, but if someone says, hey, I want to spend $4,000 on a Strat, and, you know, I want the best of the best, then I would say, what are your features and whether they should be looking at something that's already made or do they make it themselves?
Yeah. At $4,000, you've got a lot of options.
For a Strat, your world's whatever you want it to be.
Right.
You know. But let's just say it's $1,500.
Right.
Then, you know, and they're like, hey, I'm looking at I had a friend, he was looking for a Strat. He wanted a Strat, and he wanted to spend about $1,500. He ended up getting that olive drab green with the maple neck, which is a nice looking guitar, and he'll enjoy it. But it got me out of the conversation fast.
Yeah.
For me, I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not in that business, so I don't care enough.
Yeah.
But he wanted a Strat, and I'm not going to sit there and start not selling Strats. I'm like, go buy it. What am I care?
Yeah. I feel like at $1,500, my first suggestion would be go on Craigslist, look up a Sir classic S-style guitar. You might be able to find one. Yeah. To where you're going to get, you know, you're going to get a handmade guitar, or closer to a handmade guitar anyways than what you're going to get a Fender.
Well, I don't think it's any more handmade than a Strat.
Yeah, but you're going to...
But
yeah, I mean, all day long, I still think, like, you know, you just do Craigslist, you do Reverb, you find it.
Oh, I think you're right.
You find it secondhand.
Yeah, no doubt.
Here's something that I think there's some reality behind, and this is a total change of topic here. This isn't about brand loyalty. This is just about consumerism and guitar players in general. If you're looking to buy a secondhand John Suhr guitar or Tom Anderson guitar or something that's really nice, I can almost promise you that guy has not abused that guitar.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah, so you're going to go out and you're going to find a $2,500 guitar for $1,500, and it's going to be nice. Because most of the times, the guys that are buying those guitars are not like road warriors. They're weekend warriors.
That's right. Because you are buying, at that particular point, a working man's guitar for a very high dollar. And people are going to baby that. That's absolutely right. It becomes an under-the-bed guitar. Just like any Les Paul, if you're wondering why when you go on Craigslist, people have their Les Paul traditionals or their custom shop customs so high priced, it's because that thing to them was cash under the bed. They would take it out and look at it and play with it once in a while. And the guys who really play it don't want to get rid of it. You know?
True.
And that's just the way it is. Some things will never change. Ba-da-da, ba-da. I know John loves that guy. So
well, the moment that you said that's just the way it is, it immediately bum 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 right through my head.
Oh, hilarious. But yeah, I mean, buying brands, it's funny, but because it's a loaded question. Do brands matter? Yes, they do, and I'll explain why. You bought a Mesa. You know what that's going to sound like. You know what that amp is. You're buying that brand, and you got that amp because they provide a sound and an amp that you like. Does anyone make anything like it? Who cares? You have that.
Right.
What do you care? Like, I love when people are always like, well, is there anything else I should be looking at? Yeah, a piece of music. Like, they become so over the top. And I've been saying this for a while, that a lot of people on YouTube especially become so gear centric. Everything is about the gear. In fact, when you talk to somebody and you're like, what do you have for gear? And they start telling me, I'm always like, either this guy's the greatest player in the world or he's the worst.
Right. That's funny.
It's somewhere.
Yeah, it's somewhere in between.
Right. Well, that's where everybody would be.
Well, that's where everybody would be. Right. Exactly. It's
But it's
I totally get it. I totally get it. I think about brand loyalty, and when you said Mesa, I would say, yes, there is some brand loyalty there from me, from the perspective that when I see one listed, I'm curious because I already know it's good.
But that's not. But
it's an identifier.
Right. I was gonna say, is that brand loyalty, or did they make a product that by right they should be effing proud, and people should buy that because that's their name. That's the name. When Fender puts their name on something, they want people to know this was Fender. And is Fender today the same Fender that Leo Fender ran or that CBS ran? I don't even think of them as the same company. They're making the same products. But if you think about Leo Fender was like, and people are going to get mad when they hear me say this, but I consider him like a broken clock. They're right twice a day. The Strat, amazing. The Telecaster, fantastic. A bunch of amps in the 50s and 60s, great. Since then, maybe the Stingray was cool, but I think what I love about Music Man is they made the Sterling bass, and the Sterling bass is someone that looked at the Music Man Stingray and said, how do we fix this thing? How can we make this a better bass? And they did. And people can argue, but I don't care. You put them side by side, the Stingray looks like Gumby.
Leo thinks interesting. He had some good ideas.
Yeah.
J bass, P bass.
Oh yeah, those are great. Right.
Yeah,
but I can just say Jazzmaster.
I know you're not a fan. Johnny Marr would argue with you, but
and he can. But look at the saddles on those guitars, or the bridge on that guitar. Come on.
I would never buy one. I had a Jazzmaster that was a Nash Jazzmaster, and that was pretty good. But it's because he used completely different hardware on it to make it functional. And to your point, it's not a great guitar out of the gate. That's when you start looking for something better.
Well,
and I think that's where these brand loyalty things, this is where the identifiers to me are more important than a loyalty to a company. It's like, what do you want? You want a Jazzmaster? All right, sweet. You should probably look at the Nash Jazzmasters because they use a better bridge. They use a better tremolo. It stays in tune, and it still looks exactly the same. They're going to give you better pickups, yada, yada, yada. We can have that conversation all day long. Or you could say, like what we were talking earlier. I kind of want to get a Strat. I'm looking at, I'm sort of disappointed because Fender doesn't make it in Sonic Blue. Thank you very much. They, they don't have a color that I'm crazy about. I'm thinking about the olive drab, whatever. Okay, well, have you looked at Warmoth? Have you looked at G&L? Have you looked at literally every guitar company on the planet who makes something they call an S-style guitar?
Mm-hmm.
So the loyalty, I don't know. Like I said, I think it's more of an identifier than a loyalty. It's a jumping off point.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the players that play know whether it's a Strat or not, or whether it's another brand like G&L, they'd be more into it. Whereas I think the beginner sees it as, I started guitar because I loved Stevie Ray Vaughan and Stevie played Fender, so I want to play Fender. And it becomes that iconic. And even if they don't end up playing it, they want to at least own it so they could say, I have a Strat.
Right. I still wouldn't consider that loyalty, though.
Well,
loyalty to me is like, what do you do after your first experience?
Well, I mean, but if you're a Strat, like I'm a Strat player. I love Strats and Tellys over like a shorter scale guitar. I just want to go back to what I was saying. Like, I know Leo Fender hated the big headstock, and I was with him on that. But I think the 3-bolt system is terrible. Terrible. And I know he was consulting for CBS during those years when they came out with it. And I have a feeling deep down that the 3-bolt was probably his idea, because every Music Man in G&L from that era with Leo working also came with the 3-bolt.
Mm.
And that was basically his job before he started Music Man, was consulting for Fender. So, I mean, he was even designing guitars for them still. But I just think that there was a lot of misses as well. But I mean, same with Gibson. Gibson makes a Les Paul. Iconic. I had a few Les Pauls, you recall. I love Jimmy Page, so it's a particular Les Paul that I like.
Right.
At the end of the day, I don't care. I don't play them, so I got rid of them. But I don't understand the constant running for gear and just trying to, guys buy something and then the next week. For instance, I don't know, you ever watch the Tone King videos?
No, not really.
Have you seen him?
I know who he is, yeah.
Right, yeah. I find his stuff interesting. He reminds me of every kid I knew growing up when I was first starting guitar. He was the guy that would go out and he had everything. You got it. I don't know what his name is. Is it Lewis or something? Hey, you got to go over to Lewis's house because Lewis just got the brand new Marshall. Lewis just got this. Lewis just got that. And then you go over there and you're like, Lewis should be practicing.
Right.
Lewis, stop going out of the house to the store. You know what I mean? And it's
I do.
And YouTube has now become
I'm guilty.
Yes, but you want a hoarder.
Oh, I'm a
you
trader.
get rid of it right after you buy it, which I always thought was nuts.
It is nuts.
No, but like, that's the one thing where I can always say about you is, like, if someone says, does John buy a lot of gear? Yeah, he sells it the day after. I mean, like, but you know what I mean? But this guy's hoarding
totally
this.
True.
This guy's hoarding stuff. And I'm like, I can't believe how many guitars this guy has. And then he goes through the whole process of having a company on his show manufacture a guitar for him. And, it's entertaining. And I guess that's all you can say for it, is it's entertaining. But I'm watching him play, and afterwards I'm like, why? why are you getting all this gear? Like, wouldn't you be like, I don't know, when I get along with the guitar, I turn the lights down low. No. I mean, I'm playing. I want
Give
to
the
play.
guitar a bubble bath.
Yeah, exactly. I want to play. I turn on whatever, like, when you're, I like backing tracks. I like to have fun and play the hell out of it. And then, then I'm like, oh shit, you know what? I wanted to change the strings. I never got around to it because you play,
Your guitars need a spa day.
But you know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. If you plan like, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change the strings on my guitar. And then you go, let me see if these are in tune. Oh, wait, this sounds pretty good. Hold on. Let me put on this backing track to play. All right, now I'm playing for 2 hours and I'm going through all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I got no time to change these strings.
Yeah.
That's a different animal. And YouTube's awesome because YouTube, you have like, hey, I never knew how to play... Give me an absurd song. I never knew how to play Saga on the loose. I think I'm going to look up how to play on the loose. First, I'm going to see if I can figure it out by watching them play. I mean, you have all this information. We want information. Information.
You are the new number 2.
I am not a number. I am a free man. No, so anyways, exactly. Folks, that's from The Prisoner, if you don't know. It's also from a song called The Prisoner by Iron Maiden, but it's actually a TV show called The Prisoner. Anyways, the point I was making is there seems to be such a thing about gear. And I have to say, is it the companies behind it that are like endorsing and making these YouTube's channels, profitable? Like the guitarologist, what's his first name? Why am I blanking on his name?
B-Rad.
Brad. Yes. So Brad, the guitarologist, has a very interesting page. He goes on and he fixes stuff. And that aspect of the show I really like. And sometimes he goes on a rant, and sometimes I agree with him, and sometimes I don't. Either way, it's still a pretty enjoyable show. One thing Brad's not doing is buying a guitar every other week or showing some new piece of gear every week. But he is a decent player. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I enjoy his channel. There'd be some other guys who have channels that tell me, know your gear, and can't play. I'm glad he knows his gear. I wish he knew it a little bit better.
I know exactly what you mean.
You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, I've got history with that guy.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me just say this. Here's 5 things you never knew about a Fender, and then he lists 5 things that you would have to have literally been brain dead in a cave for 50 years to not know.
Well, I think that YouTube, I shouldn't blame YouTube. YouTube just provides the platform, but people are so susceptible to this short attention span theater stuff. That's the reason that anybody out there can post a video, 5 things you didn't know about yada yada yada, and it doesn't even matter.
Right.
DL, you could put a video up there tomorrow that'll be 5 things you didn't know about the New England Patriots, and you're going to get a ton of hits because people are going to be like, oh, I wonder what they are. And the reality is, anybody who's a Patriots fan are going to know all these things. But you're going to get 1 or 2 people out there who don't watch the NFL who are going to be like, oh, my God, this guy's full of information.
Right. When you can Google the information in 2 seconds. I just find it like totally, there's another company, Mojo, that does always these top 10s. And they're like, if you don't agree with our top 10, oh, Christ. I'm like, haven't I already committed enough time to this? Yeah. Yes, I disagree with everything, but I'm not going to write anything. You're not roping me in. And then I watched something last night that I thought you would enjoy, and I should have sent it to you, but I did not. It was Joe Rogan interviewing David Lee Roth.
Oh, guess who else watched that last night?
Did you really?
Oh, totally. It was fantastic. It was really good.
The guy, and I'll tell you right now, so as a kid, I thought David Lee Roth was insane. like just a wild man in Van Halen. And then after Van Halen, he got his own radio show and he would go around the circuit. I thought, this guy's nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think he might be brilliant.
Yeah.
I think there's something he intellectualizes a lot of stuff and thinks about things in ways. And I think the way he communicates it, like when he's telling the story, is a little savantish, and that's what makes him come across weird. But if you really get to the meat and potatoes of what he's saying something very articulate and right on.
Yeah. I think anybody who ascends to that level of stardom, there's something there. There's something they're good at.
Yeah.
David Lee Roth is very smart. I mean, the guy's a goofball, but man, when he was talking about Van Halen being in competition with everybody to dominate all the way back in 1973.
Yeah.
And he's like talking about it from the perspective. He's like, everybody in the band is classically trained, including myself. He was like a trumpet player in high school band.
Sax, I think.
Yeah,
one of the. He said alto sax. I think.
Did he say alto sax? But he was talking about competing for first chair, and saying, every 8 months you're competing for first chair, and I was going to get it. But he was talking about that level of competition, and how important it was for them to win. And I mean, if that attitude was pervasive in his childhood, it certainly persisted through his adulthood. Because he's been the same way. Those guys.
He brought up a lot of great things. Just to gloss over, he talked about the 10,000 hours. And for those people that don't know 10,000 hours, there was a book put out, and I can't remember what the name is. It might have been 10,000 hours, but there's a book about how if you want to master anything and be wildly successful at something, you have to put in 10,000 hours of training.
Mm-hmm.
And focus on it. So if you want to be a master on the guitar, you have to put in those 10,000 hours. Now, obviously, you can do that over a certain amount of years. He was saying that in the Chinese philosophy that it was 10 hours a day, right, closer to 30,000, 10 hours a day for 10 years.
Right.
Which is, crazy, but that's what he was saying. And it's a very interesting thing because it goes back to what I'm talking about here with people who play and they go on YouTube and play, and you can see the guys who put the real time in, and you can see the guys who and of course you're going to have the prodigies, and that's what he talks about. He was explaining, and Joe Rogan even made a comment that people that usually get the success pretty fast without putting those times in will lose it just as fast.
Right. It's easy to slip through your fingers.
Right. And I thought that was interesting. I also thought what I really enjoyed in the conversation with David Lee Roth and was the rehearsing.
Oh, yeah.
He says it's more important than the show. And again, this is where I think he's brilliant, but he's not fully stating like what I consider the obvious for people to get what he was saying there. But what he's saying is like the great time you have getting fitted for shoes and the meal you get to go eat with the guys that you're hanging with. And then you go and you're rehearsing and everyone's having a good time. There's no pressure. It's fun. You can do it anywhere in the country. That's why he was saying, where do you do it? Are you doing it in Cleveland? Go do it in Hawaii, in Vegas. It's like go rent a place. And, he's basically saying he makes it so the rehearsal is the good time. And that's what you remember. Mm-hmm. The show, the sound guy sucks. The guitar player's pissed off because he can't hear his guitar in his sound wedge.
Right.
He's like, that's 2 hours that sucks. What leads up to it is the great time. And that's the memories of the whole tour. And I thought that was very...
I mean, he's more or less, he's just saying it's not the destination, it's the journey.
Yes, exactly. And
because there was even a point when he was talking about Cleveland, and he said, "So you're in Cleveland? Make it yours."
Right. Own it.
Like, yeah, Cleveland doesn't have to be a bad thing, you know. So
Yeah.
I totally I took a minute with that statement that he was making about rehearsal being fun, because I can tell you right now, there's a number of rehearsal scenarios that I go into where I'm like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
Because I like the show. I have fun at the show, unless it's a show where the monitor mix is terrible.
Right.
Or it's a show where there's nothing for the band. We don't get paid enough. There's no food. There's no real room to, like, go and set up in. There's all of these things that can and often
there's
do
no
happen.
food. Wait, there's no food? These savages?
These
savages
right.
that are hiring you, they can't provide food?
I've got these regular pieces of meat and these little tiny breads. Right.
Right.
Yeah. No, I mean, exactly. How spoiled am I? No, but my point is, like, things will go and often do go wrong at shows, and it's easy to get really frustrated and be like, this fucking sucks.
And for good reason. I don't think he was saying there wasn't good reason. I mean, all the pressure, and I think what he was saying too is all the pressure is on that one night. You got 2 hours. So something goes wrong. Now you're upset because these people that paid for the tickets and are not getting the 100% the show you want. But he was saying what a great time it was coming up to it, and the rehearsals, you control that.
But that's the statement he made that made me kind of introspective for a minute. To think, like, that's a really good point, and that's something that I need to change in my own behaviors and attitude, because I love playing. I love, if I'm playing at home and I've got backing tracks on YouTube, and the kids are doing their own thing in the living room, the wife's not bugging me, whatever. I have a blast. I can play guitar for 3 hours and have fun the whole time. But then when you go to rehearsals once a week, it's like, ugh, and it shouldn't be. And what Dave is saying is find a way to make that time as exciting as the show. And
it's fun. Well, I think he was
really good
embracing.
Point.
I think he was embracing all of the whole process of you got to get costumes. You got to go out, and that's fun. You got to go out and eat, and you're going to find new places to eat and all those experiences. And I love when he was talking about songwriting, and he says the waitress leans over and she's like, keep your fork, there's pie. He had to jump out of his seat because he was laughing. Then he remembered that line. But he was,
so I
mean, he's very, very clever.
Oh, yeah.
In the wrapper of somebody who's nuts.
He's obviously very quick. His processing speed is quick. He's probably, if he was measured, he'd probably be measured gifted if there was, such an IQ thing.
Right.
I'm sure that his processing is quick because every time he speaks in almost this, like, old school one-liner comedy sort of an approach where he's just hammering them in there. And it's like David Lee Roth could be a stand-up comedian in the 60s,
He could have replaced Henny Youngman. I think Henny Youngman still told the same 6 jokes for 30, 40 years. He definitely has, like, the one-liners and the quips. And sometimes you don't know where he's coming from with it. But a few minutes later, you'll be like, oh, that's what he meant. Oh, that's effing funny. Like, it's like he's way ahead of you. And when I was younger, I used to see him and he'd be like, I'm Batman. And you'd be like, the guy's insane. But then you start realizing, maybe he is Batman. No, then you start to realize, like, he's making a comic book comparison to what he does. And I just think he's really, really clever and interesting. And I find him interesting.
So
you remembered your story.
I did. I had to look it up. So during Ain't Talking About Love, during the bridge, when he goes, I've been to the edge and I stood and looked down. Like, the whole band continues and he's like, way down. Hey, is that Sammy Hagar down there?
Oh,
it's just like, what? That's just hilarious live, though.
Well,
is that Sammy Hagar down there? Or maybe his career. He said something like that. I was like, oh boy.
I saw Hagar and him live doing that show.
Oh, right.
And Hagar's show was way better.
Really?
Hagar sang in tune. They sounded like the songs. Lee Roth had a good band, but Lee Roth is like, he was like such explosive energy as a kid. And as an older guy, he's not that same guy. It's like he is the post wild front man. Right. And I think he should embrace that in some ways. Like, in other words, I could picture him doing Van Halen songs with an acoustic band and him sitting on a stool in front with the vest and being much more like a class act and being like, and selling it like that. And I would be like, that's cool and that's hip. And that is someone that's embracing their age and everything else. But, when you see him and he's just can't do the jumps and he can't scream the notes, I just rather not go.
Yeah.
But I have to say, as a personality, the guy's a star.
And maybe it's good that he's doing radio now.
Yeah, in fact, I thought it was the most enjoyable version of most enjoyable Joe Rogan show I've watched in a long time. I watch him a lot, and it was one where I thought the guest really was putting some insight on stuff, and I thought it was very interesting. I enjoyed it. So much so that I didn't send it to anybody, or usually I'll message people and be like, hey, watch this. I'm watching this, and it's interesting. It's like cutting 4 pieces or something.
Yeah.
And I just kept watching it. I was like, this is great. And
he's got getting back around to your original point. I mean, his point was practice.
Yes.
Spend the time rehearsing. Get out there. You don't need 2 recto verb 50s.
Right. Yeah.
One's a backup, damn it. Leave me alone.
I also want to say, if you can't afford a nice tube amp, don't worry about it. Practice, play. I have a Fender Mustang here. There's a Spider 15. If you practice your ass off and you get really, really great and put those 10,000 hours in, the guy down the street with that tube amp that you wants something that you have that he'll never get. And that's the ability to play. It's like, get out there and play, practice, spend the time. I try to tell people, like, learn as many songs as you can, to the point when you hear a song on the radio, you're trying to figure out the chord changes, because that's also part of the fun of it. To me, to me, everything's like a quiz. I love trivia. So it's like, to me, I hear a song and I'm like, ooh, there's a 1 major 7, like could it be I'm falling in love? Could it be I'm falling in love with you, baby? Right? You hear the verse and it's like, each time I wake, I'm down, down, down. And you can hear the 1 major 7 to the 4 major 7, the 1 major, it's like you can hear these changes and you should be able to hear them. And if you can't hear them enough and what you're listening to me right now and what I'm saying is foreign, go back on one of my videos. It's all on YouTube. Go watch my Circle of Fifths and Music Theory lesson. It's all there. All the stuff's already been done. And now you can go listen and see what the importance of a really good melody is. But don't worry so much about like, what tubes should I put in my, hey, I get messages like emails. Hey, Dave, I just bought a JSX, a used one that you recommended by PV. What do you think the best tubes are for it? Huh?
Right.
I give a shit.
Right.
I don't care. Whatever tubes are in, it's fine. If they run out, I'll go online and I'll see who's bulking them cheap. I don't care. I don't. You're splitting hairs. So, you have guys on YouTube.
Very much.
Who are comparing tubes, and they're like, here's what a Marshall sounds like with JJ's, and here's what they sound like with Root. And I'm like, you know what?
My very, very good friend Chris is like me, and maybe worse, in the sense of how much gear he goes through.
Uh-huh.
And even he and I have had the conversation before about tubes where he was like, because I've never been a tube chaser. Like I know what's good. I'll be perfectly happy buying JJs, which is normally relatively cheap, and they work every time. I've never had a problem with them, so I stick with them. There's brand loyalty for you. JJs
There you go.
are fantastic and they're inexpensive. Chris and I had that conversation where he was like, dude, I've gone through like a 2 or 3 year period where I was chasing tubes and I was spending hundreds of dollars on NOS tubes and Mullards and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, I don't ever want to go back down that hole again. And he said, like, he was like, I had the winged seat power tubes and I had this and that. And he was like, and I really quickly learned they didn't really make much of a difference at all. There was, he was like, pickups make a bigger difference. Your speaker makes a bigger difference. Turning your knobs on your amps make a bigger difference. But the tubes, he was like, it was a huge waste of money.
Well, you got guys on YouTube who are doing like tube comparisons, and then you have people in the comments, oh, I hear there's more focused mids in those. They just want to be like, oh, I'm validated by commenting on tone. I validate myself by commenting on tone. When I see someone that has a tube comparison, I'm like, here's somebody that has way too much time on their hands.
Too much time on my hands.
Well, I've been sitting on this bus tube. Oh, what a great song. But which takes us back to the Styx thing again.
Exactly.
It's a
if you're a
song
Dennis
by
the
Styx.
Young fan, get out.
That's right.
No,
not that there's anything wrong with it. Right? That's what they have to say about Dennis the Young fans, right? Not that there's anything wrong with it. No, but seriously, you really, I've been beating this horse, and this has been my theme for 2019, folks. I watched this David Lee Roth thing, and even he's talking about it. 10,000 hours, get out there and practice and learn. I'm always thinking to myself, God, I want to walk into not only do I want to be hired more, I want to walk into a session where someone's like, oh, we need this, and you're the guy. That's like my thing. I don't really, it's like I have enough gear to go into a session and someone says, hey, we need this sound, we need that sound, bring this, or we need you to sound like this. I can do it all. It doesn't matter to me. And then half the time I could sit there and say, do you have what software you're running? And I could use one of their, if I'm going direct. I even think that sounds fine to me most of the time. But it's just this whole chasing down of gear, I think is it's crazy. Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna do
did I show you my new Harley Benton?
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna do a video this week highlighting like what I call like some of my favorite like picking synchronization exercises. Just doing a couple of them, but there's a lot of guitar players out there who will say, I've only got, a half hour to myself a day or whatever. And they're going to say, I can practice for a half hour. I can maybe even practice for an hour. But I would suggest this if your relationship with your wife is good enough, because you never know how she's going to be. Or your husband, for that matter, if you're a female viewer and he's a pain in the ass.
Or your husband, if you're a Dennis DeYoung fan.
That's there it is. Oh, and that circle. Oh, it's complete. Go on your couch while you're watching TV with your unplugged electric guitar that doesn't make that much noise, and practice while you're watching TV. It's not that difficult to sit there and brainlessly run some of the stuff. I think it's really important to practice to an actual track and to be able to practice your timing and your key signatures and everything. But for the brainless stuff that just enhances your muscle memory and your synchronization, run through exercises while you're watching TV. Just run through 100%. Them brainlessly. You and I used to do that all the time, watching Canon or whatever.
Yeah.
You just
on one of my episodes, I did the violin solo to play the game tonight when it goes that whole violin little Chris ascending line. And I started playing it, and I'm like, oh, this is not comfortable for a guitar player. Where the notes fall were not great. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do this one tomorrow. And that night, I played it on the guitar, and I played it nonstop while I was watching TV without the amp plugged in, just to get the fingering. And I would play it as slow as I could. I would play it medium. Then I would play it as fast as I could play it. Then I would do it slow again. But the thing was, I just kept doing it over and over again. So when I went to go record it, it was like second nature. I could do it no problem. But I had to practice it for at least an hour the night before because it was so awkward in my fingering.
Right.
And, for the most part, a lot of the times I will play something. If someone says, hey, you should go do this, I'll listen to it. And then within the hour, I'm playing it on the thing after I listen to it and learn the solo. But in that particular one where the fingering was like all way off from what I'm comfortable playing, I had to practice it. And, people should spend more time practicing. I mean, to me, it's, I guess it's like you either have a love for the instrument or you have a love for the collecting of the instrument. I think that's the thing, is like the two worlds may be combining, and maybe I'm being overly sensitive to it, that the collecting half of the world that really doesn't care how they play has taken over YouTube, and the people who actually, and the people that actually play, the funny thing is there's a lot of guys out there doing lesson stuff, and lesson stuff, like when I do my lessons, I try to do them in songs or like just little snippet technique stuff that I think is important. But I just don't think like some of the lesson stuff online is that good either, which is probably why the other stuff is doing so well. Because I think that a lot of the lesson guys are just so slow at teaching. And it's like, God, this is painful. First finger here. Just play the lick slow. If you shouldn't be able to figure it out, then people shouldn't be watching that level of play. You know what I mean? That's how I looked at it. But YouTube's a great thing, period, because you have everything you want. Like I said, maybe I'm being sensitive to the fact that some guys out there just want to go spend money and buy gear and talk about the gear. But I think the gear, if you look at like, Jimmy Page in the movie It Might Get Loud, he pulls out a Les Paul, and that Les Paul, he's been with him since like 69. There's 40 years of guitars that came out between that, and he's not pulling one of them out that he's fallen in love with. He's playing the same guitar for years.
Right.
Peter Frampton goes out on tour. He plays the same guitar for years.
Some people are going to say, yeah, but those guys have, it's a 59, man.
Yeah, like that matters.
Doesn't matter.
I played a 58 Les Paul, and I played a 58 historic, and I prefer the historic. I like the frets better. I like the way it felt better. It's all preference. I mean, anyone that's into the whole thing about these years, the vintage stuff is better, and it's nonsense. I remember when Andy Johns came to the LA Amp show, and we were talking about Vox, and he says, these amps blow away the shit we were recording back in the day, in the early 70s. The stuff with the Beatles and the stuff with Zeppelin, this stuff blows it away. But you hear people, talk, but the people that weren't there will sit there and say, that's the best stuff. Go buy it used for 4 times. The guy's telling me right there that the brand new Vox sounds way better than a 1968 Vox. You know what I mean? But everyone that's not in the business, who's on the YouTube, is going to sit there and say, oh, here's the vintage, and I'm going to side by side it. And I can't play, but I'm going to play a few chords, and you should be able to know everything about the amp from that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what can you say? There's two different. You're right. It's pretty poignant. You say that we're living in two worlds kind of colliding here.
Yes.
Because there are people that care about playing, and there are people that are, maybe they don't care as much about playing. They just care about having the cooler stuff. And you know what? Fine. To those people, you have every right to buy and sell and, get whatever you want. And if you've got really, really cool gear, sweet. I think it's cool too. But, if you're just out there playing, you can make a $300 Ibanez work.
Right. You know,
You're gonna kill it.
it's probably the same with like guys who like maybe cafe race motorcycles.
Yeah.
Right. Some guys who's riding on the street saying, yeah, but this one corner's nicer. And the guy's like, when the hell are you turning at that? I mean, it's like, what are you talking about? That thing's track ready. Like, what do you?
Yeah.
You know,
no, you're absolutely right. I mean, you could use that analogy with literally anything.
Yeah.
You know, you can kill a guy with a Glock 19 just as easy as you could with the 34 competition pistol. You know, it's they're both going to do the same thing, but the 34 is going to be a couple $100 more. It's going to have tricked out sights, you're getting the tricked out gun, or you know, you can go even higher. Oh, I got a custom.
But is the 34 going to have the ported barrel?
Exactly. But the point is, like, if I go to the range with my my Beretta P4X or PX4, whatever it's called, I hit the target every time. I'm pretty good little pattern too. And that was, it's $500 gun. It's,
that's all you need.
But I can't tell you how many times I go to the range and I see guys there putting together like their military styled sort of like the AR style guns, and they're putting it together and they get it all together and it looks cool, and they shoot and they suck.
Yeah, they're collectors. That's exactly.
They're having fun.
Yeah,
and it's okay. You can have that fun.
I agree.
I didn't need to put mine together in order to hit the target in a pattern, that tight.
Right. Well, the AR, first of all, is not
a pattern that tight.
Right. The AR is not an easy gun to shoot to begin with. I've talked about that many times with people that I'm not a big fan of the ARs. I think they're very difficult to shoot, especially if you're shooting the 5.56 round. It's got a lot of pressure.
You are listening to Firearm Talk, Richard.
Well, but I'm just saying, there's it's almost exactly the same though. It's funny you say this because Mark Lever, who plays bass, loves beautiful basses. He's always, that's a beautiful instrument. Yeah. The more ornate, the more the gorgeous wood, the more his eyes light up. And we went to the range and he's like, yeah, I'm not really a Glock guy. What a shock. He has this Colt all chromed out, right? It's like, and that's what he likes. He doesn't like the utilitarian, this is ugly and simple and function over form. And and he bought a ton of stuff. He had a ton of them.
Yeah. And
because he just wanted to collect, and people love to collect. And I have to say, it's basically, that's what I would say for me when it comes to guitars. Like someone says, oh, I'm thinking about a Strat. Okay. Well, like with my niece, function over form. Like I hate Sunburst, but they're way more available. And it's functional. Just get it. Like it's over, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be, people are always like, oh, I love of course everyone's going to make their own guitar look the way they want it to look within reason, but I mean like a Mary Kay, the gold hardware, not for me. I don't need anything ornate or anything like that. But
yeah, no, but that's what it's all about. You find something, and I feel like the guys that play really, really well, they find something that works and then they work it.
Yeah.
And the guys who don't play so well, maybe, I don't know the psychology behind it. Maybe they're compensating for their lack of ability. Maybe they're searching for an easy way to get something better. I always kind of feel like my preference for big frets has everything in the world to do with, compensating for, bending ability. Because there's a lot of guys out there who play vintage Strats and they play blues on it and they can bend the hell out of it, where I'm like, I don't want that. I want big fat frets so I can really dig in and get under it. It's like why those guys can do it and why I feel like I need bigger frets to do it. I don't know.
Well, I think it's all preference.
I just, but it makes me wonder, like, okay, where did it start?
It started
couch
because we grew up in with the shredder guitars. That's where we started. Like I was, when I first started playing, everybody was Kramers and Jacksons. When for you, it was more Jackson, Ibanez, maybe ESP.
Yeah.
But for me, it
was really popular when I started coming up.
Yeah, see, for me, it was Kramer and Jackson's. 90s. Yeah, and Ibanez was later.
Yeah.
Ibanez, when I was coming up, was everybody knew them for the lawsuit clones from the late 70s. So, yeah. So the thing with that is like, and again, for people that don't know what that is they were making knockoffs. And it wasn't that they were making the knockoffs was the problem. Gibson filed a cease and desist letter for them because the headstock was identical. And the headstock can't be identical because that's called trade dress and there's a trademark associated with that shape. So Ibanez changed the shape and legally they could keep making that guitar. They just chose not to. And they chose not to because they were trying to get into their own designs and kind of figure out their own brand with stuff like the Iceman and the Artist. So that's just a little history there for you. But so when the Super Strats came out in the early 80s, you had guitars that were replacing the 7 1/4 radius guitars with a 12-inch radius or bigger, flatter fingerboard, larger frets, locking tremolos that have just come out like around 83, 84. So yeah, you have this whole wave of guys growing up on that and getting used, and that's who the players like us, why we like the jumbo frets, that's what we grew up on. Just like guys who grew up on a Les Paul will play a Les Paul and think a Strat's harder to play. I think a Les Paul's harder to play. Not that they're hard to play, but they're just harder to play. I mean,
no, I totally agree. I think that has everything to do with your wrist position.
It has to do with how you played, how you got accustomed to playing.
Stratocaster, your wrist is straight. Les Paul, your wrist is angled a little bit differently, and because of that, that tiny little change takes a while to overcome. When I still had my Les Pauls, if I ever went through a period where I was playing the Paul for 2 months like consistently and not any of my Strat style guitars, I'd go back to the Strat and be like, boy, this is foreign. And then it takes you a few days to get out of it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm back to normal, but I could see somebody who's a Strat player going to Guitar Center or wherever and picking up a Paul and being like, I don't like it. I can't play it because it's the first time they played it. And they're sitting there going, this is not for me. I could see that. Yeah. It's like you got to realize it's going to take you a day or two to get yourself out of that sort of funk.
Well, when I was a kid, I played a Strat style guitar. And when I went to go buy another guitar in 86, I bought a Pacer Deluxe, Kramer Pacer Deluxe. But before I bought it, a friend of mine was like, you got to try my Les Paul. You're going to love it. And I played it for like an hour at his house, and I'm like, yeah, I could never play this thing. It just was so foreign to me. And I ended up getting the Kramer. I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. I also don't like the fact when you get higher up on the neck, the frets get closer together than on a Strat. It's it's minute, but it's noticeable to me when you're up by the 22, the 20. The way
I thought you were leading into a joke there.
No.
I don't like the way that when you get higher up on the neck, the frets get closer together.
No, they get really close.
That's
on
every
a short
guitar.
Scale. Yeah, but on a short scale, they're closer.
I totally follow you.
Right.
That never really bothered me that much. Oddly enough, I find it not as difficult to play my SG coming off of a Strat.
Well, it's a flat top body.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It still has the same bridge style. The strings are still higher off the body than they would be with a Strat, but it's not as drastic, I guess.
Right.
Why?
Still a flat top. Yeah.
Yeah. I like the SGs. I'm an SG guy.
I like the Les Pauls. I think they were a fine guitar. I mean, I think that
any guitar good too. Usually they sound pretty good. Nice big fat mahogany body.
Oh yeah, it's the maple top, the resonating maple top. But it's funny because talking about that, people will sit there and say, "Oh man, the Les Paul, yeah, that classic, the woods matter, the maple top, the mahogany body, the mahogany neck." Well, in the 70s, they had a maple neck. How come no one's sitting there screaming that the tone changed? You know what I mean? And if that's the case, I want you to listen to a 70s Les Paul and a modern one and tell me the difference. You can't tell shit.
We're going to get into this one again.
I'm just saying.
No, I follow. I think,
saying.
Yeah, I got to wrap.
But by the way, folks, I love the words "just saying."
Just saying.
Right, because you could say to somebody,
how about it is what it is.
Yeah. Hold on.
I like anytime you can say something that is completely meaningless. I like that.
Just saying is great because you could say to somebody, "Hey, you're looking kind of fat." What? I'm just saying. Oh, you're just saying. Well, for then, since you're just saying it, just
right,
go ahead and
exactly.
get me a new ass. That's fine.
It is what it is. Agree to disagree.
I'd agree. Agree to disagree. When in Rome.
Yes, go on.
Now I'm going to ruin you. Go into Wendy's and try Dave's Diet Orange Cream Soda. It's Wendy's brand. Dave's. Okay. Oh my God!
I don't think I've ever seen it there before.
Oh, you know they have the full digital machines now.
All right.
You know the digital soda machines where you pick the diet. You just click Diet Dave's Orange Cream. It's fantastic.
Yeah, the only time I'm ever at a fast food place would be if I'm like hitting a drive-through. I don't think I've walked inside of one in years. So I missed it.
Well,
I just say give me a Coke Zero if they have it, and that's it.
Me and a buddy of mine used to go talk music and stuff at this diner, and he started saying, "Man, it cost me $30-something every time I walk in that place." I'm like, "Well, don't order the steak tips." He goes, "Even the chili's too expensive. Let's go get chili next time at Wendy's." I said, "Okay, we'll go to Wendy's." So we went to Wendy's. We got chili, and I went and got this soda. And he was like, "What the hell are you drinking?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just tried this. It's orange cream. It's really good." So he goes up there and he goes and dumps out his soda and he tries it. He's been there like 3 times a day every day now.
Oh, that's funny. So it's called Dave's Orange Cream Soda? Diet Orange Cream Soda?
Yeah, they have a diet cherry cream and a diet orange cream.
Now, have you bothered to look this up to see if it's bottled and distributed anywhere else, or are you just going to Wendy's?
Oh, no, I looked. They don't have it. The only thing close to it is Stewart's makes an orange cream, but I don't think it's diet.
Okay. All right. Well, interesting.
Stewart. Yeah.
For all you guys out there listening, do a little bit of practicing this week and see if you get better.
I'm going to see the Dan Band on Saturday.
Oh boy.
You know
they're still doing that? Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
All right. That sounds fun.
They're playing at Foxwoods.
I don't know what that is.
It's a casino in Connecticut.
Okay.
If anybody wants to see me, I'll be performing in the Foxwoods. I'll be there Foxwoods on Saturday night.
There you go. And with that, we shall catch you later.
All right, very good, John.
Take it easy, man. Have a good one.
Very good.
You're listening to Guitar Talk with Dave and John.